Hello guys, welcome to Disaster Management Complete Syllabus Explanation. Risk. Risk is a measure of the expected losses due to hazardous event of a particular magnitude occurring in a given area over a specific time period. Risk is a function of the probability of particular occurrences and the losses each would cause. The level of risk depends on nature of the hazard, vulnerability of the elements which are affected, economic value of the. Generally, disasters are of two types: natural and man-made. Based on the devastation, these are further classified into major or minor natural disaster and major or minor man-made disasters. Some of the disasters are listed below. Major natural disasters: flood, cyclone, drought, earthquake. Minor natural disasters: cold wave, thunderstorms, heat waves, mudslides, storm. Turn pan handles to the center of the stove and put them out of touch of the children in the house. Do ensure that the floor is always dry, so that you do not slip and fall on the fire. Do keep matches out of the reach of children. Important don'ts in the kitchen. Don't put towels or dish rags near a stove burner. Don't wear loose-fitting cloths when you cook, and don't reach across the top of the stove when you are cooking. Don't put things in the cabinets or shelves above the stove. Young children may try to reach them and accidentally start the burners, start a fire, catch on fire. Don't store spray cans or cans carrying inflammable items near the stove. Don't let small children near an open oven door. They can be burnt by the heat or by falling onto the door or into the oven. Don't lean against the stove to keep warm. Don't use towels as path holders. They may catch on fire. Don't overload an electrical outlet with several appliances or extension cords. The cords or plugs may overheat and cause a fire. Don't use water to put out grease fire. Only use baking soda, salt, or a tight lid. Always keep a box of baking soda near the stove. Don't use radios or other small appliances near. Common tips. Do keep the number of the fire service near the telephone and ensures that everyone in the family knows the number. Do keep matches and lighters away from children. Do sleep with your bedroom closed to prevent the spread of fire. Do you know that you should never run if your clothes are on fire, and that you should stop down roll? The new classification distinguishes two generic disaster groups: natural and technological disasters. The natural disaster category being divided into 6 disaster groups: biological, geophysical, meteorological, hydrogeological, climatological, and extraterrestrial. Each group covers different disaster main types, each having different disaster subtypes. Natural disasters are classified as causes: environmental. Priority areas for intervention. The continuation or quick rehabilitation of effective environmental health services is of primary importance in emergency health management after the onset of a natural disaster. First consideration should be given to areas where health risks have increased. These are areas with high population densities and serve disruption of services. Secondary priority areas are those with high population densities and moderate disruption, or those with moderate densities with serve disruption. Third priority should be given to areas with low population density and main or disruption of services. Areas with high population densities are urban areas and their peripheries, camps for refugees and displaced persons, and temporary settlements. Hospitals and health clinics are among the facilities needing priority environmental health services. Shelters are, by definition, short-term accommodations where the affected population can sit out the event a hurricane, for example, and return to their homes as soon as possible. Such facilities are not designed to provide the required basic services for hundreds of people for prolonged periods. However, experience has shown that shelters remain occupied long after the event, preventing the resumption of the facility's normal operation. Temporary camp settlements often create areas of extremely high population density, where suitable services may be absent. Lack of water and basic sanitation facilities lowers the existing level of hygiene and increases the risk of communicable disease. Diseases that are endemic in the area of origin, transit and settlement of displaced populations are of special concern. International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies report that up to 50% of deaths among displaced people are caused by waterborne diseases. In selecting sites for temporary settlements, it's critical to ensure that the camp has access to dependable water supply and other environmental health services. Priority environmental health services. Primary consideration should be given to services essential to protecting and ensuring the well-being of the people in high-risk areas, with emphasis on prevention and control of communicable diseases. Post-disaster environmental health measures can be divided into two priorities. Ensuring that there are adequate amount of safe drinking water, basic sanitation facilities, disposal of excrete, wastewater, solid wastes and adequate shelter. Providing food protection measures, establishing or continuing vector control measures, and promoting personal hygiene. The following actions are recommended to quickly re-establish adequate environmental health services and conditions. Obtain information on population movements in or near stricken areas and map the location of camps for refugees and displaced personnels, particularly and or totally evacuated areas, relief worker settlements, hospitals and other medical facilities. This information will assist in determining which localities need priority attention. Carry out rapid assessment to determine the extent of damage to the public water supply and waste disposal systems and food production, storage and distribution networks. Determine the remaining operational capacity for delivering these basic environmental health services. Make an inventory of available resources including undamaged food stocks, human resources, readily available equipment, materials and supplies. Determine the stricken population's immediate needs for water, basic sanitation, housing and food. Meet the needs of essential facilities as quickly as possible after basic human consumption needs are satisfied. Hospitals and other medical facilities may need increased water supplies if there are numerous causalities. Ensure that refugees and displaced persons are properly housed and that the temporary settlements and other identified high-risk areas have basic environmental health services. For the efficient use of overburdened resources, it is important to immediately and accurately assess damages and identify needs for repair. Reports of damage and needs should include the following information: type, location and extent of damage, accessibility and required means of transport to site of damage, remaining operational capacity, estimate of resources needed for repairs, estimated repair time. Rapid assessment will assist in identifying resources required to restore the system immediately. If a list of needs is to be submitted to the donor community, it should be compiled quickly. Donor response is generally high in the days following a disaster, but soon subsides. Human resources unavailability of environmental health specialists will be limiting factor when managing an emergency situation. Experts unfamiliar with local conditions and local environmental health services might misjudge priorities. First consideration should therefore be given to using locally available manpower. The local population should be actively encouraged to assist in improving needs, resources and services. It should be clear that all immediate or short-term activities are directed to restore pre-disaster services and not to making improvements beyond the pre-existing level. Nevertheless, the rehabilitation phase of the emergency provides an excellent opportunity to access vulnerability of the water supply and sanitation system, and to carry out measures that will mitigate the effects of future events on water supply. Water supply. A survey of public water supplies will have to be made, beginning with the distribution system and advancing to the water sources. It is essential to determine physical integrity of system components, the remaining capacities, and bacteriological and chemical quality of water supplies. The main public safety aspect of water quality is microbial contamination. First priority for ensuring water quality in emergency situations is chlorination. It is the best means for disinfection and emergency treatment of water because of its effectiveness, cost, and avidity. It is advisable to increase residual chlorine levels and rise water pressure as part of the relief operations. Low water pressure will increase the likelihood of infiltration of pollutants into water mains. Repaired mains, reservoirs and other units require cleaning and disinfection. A minimum free residual chlorine level of 0.7 mg per liter is recommended in emergency situations. Routine testing of residual chlorine should start immediately with simple residual chlorine test kits and should continue well into the rehabilitation phase. In the absence of test kits, check if water has a distinct chlorine smell. Microbial contamination is likely if tests indicate the absence of residual chlorine in drinking water, unless bacteriological analyses prove otherwise. However, analysis requires long period of incubation, while residual chlorine levels can be measured in the fields in a few minutes. Chemical contamination and toxicity are the second concern in water. Quality and potential chemical contaminants have to be identified and analyzed. If there is justified concern that the water source is contaminated with toxic substances from the spill or heavy metals from volcanic activity, alternative water sources should be sought. Alternative water sources in general ordered of preference, consideration should be given to the following alternative water sources: deep groundwater, shallow groundwater and spring water, rainwater, surface water. Private water supply sources belonging to dairies, breweries, food and beverage plants, tourist resorts, other industrial and agricultural developments often exist in the vicinity of a disaster-stricken community. Pre-emergency arrangements with the owners of these systems will facilitate the use of the source in case stricken community. Sources located near downstream from sewage outfalls, chemical plants, abandoned or operational solid waste disposal sites, abandoned mines and any other hazardous sites should be considered suspect until an environmental health specialist, familiar with the local conditions, recommended otherwise. Existing and new water sources require the following protection measures. Restrict access by people and animals. If necessary, erect a fence and appoint a guard. Ensure adequate excreta disposal at safe distance from the water source. Prohibit bathing, washing, and animal husbandry upstream of intake points in rivers and streams. Upgrade wells to ensure they are protected from contamination, including proper drainage of spilled water into a soak pit at safe distance from the well opening. Estimate the maximum yield of wells. Over-extraction might bring about saline intrusion or cause the well to dry up. If necessary, ration the water supply. In many emergency situations, water has to be trucked to disaster-stricken areas or camps. Water tanks may be obtained locally from commercial water delivery companies, dairies, breweries, bottling plants, etc. All trucks should be inspected to determine fitness, and cleaned and disinfected before transporting water. As a rule, gasoline, chemical, and sewage trucks should not be used. One of the reasons for recommending a higher residual chlorine level in disaster situations is to provide extra disinfection capability to control contamination in temporary open storage. Risk of contamination of these tanks can be significantly reduced by providing a tap or siphon to allow direct withdrawal of water from near the bottom of the reservoir rather than dipping and possibly contaminating the tank. When such a tap or siphon is installed, the reservoir can also be covered. Closed water bladders should be given priority when ordering water reservoirs for emergency situations to circumvent the risk of outside contamination. If locally available, mobile water purification equipment may be used in emergencies. However, such plants require skilled operators, auxiliary power, and maintenance and repair facilities, and they only produce limited amounts of drinking water. Extreme caution should be taken before requesting mobile equipment as part of emergency supplies. Experience shows many failures because imported equipment was not suited for the conditions at the disaster site. Shipment of mobile treatment plants always has low priority because they are expensive, bulky, and occupy valuable space.